I get asked a lot about how does the United States compare to universities overseas? And while I've had a chance on occasions to travel overseas and do reporting in Israel and in other places, I don't know those other systems very well. I do find it just interesting. Almost all the places I've been lucky enough to travel to, most of the universities are publicly funded. So that's one just really huge difference. And it's really hard to make the comparisons, even though most of our universities here are also more publicly funded. But students pay very little to go to these universities in other parts of the world, the developed world. And in our country, that's obviously been shifting. Students here who are going to public universities, at least not so much community colleges, but the public colleges, are paying an increasingly higher share of it themselves. So the financing structures are a lot different, so some of these comparisons are harder. None of these overseas places have anywhere near the elaborate social structures that we have on our campuses. Fraternities. I mean, they have some sports teams, obviously, because we know about the head of the Charles and some of this other stuff. They have sports, but it's not. They don't have the athletic industrial complex the way we have. They don't have anything like our crazy football programs and our basketball programs. So they don't spend any of that money. So that's take all that cost, because it is a cost. It's not a revenue generator, except if you're one of 200 schools. For everybody else, it's a giant cost. Take that cost out of the picture. Take the whole cost of the fraternity and social structure out of the picture. Take the cost of liability for drinking out of the picture. They have a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't happen on the they don't really have campus life in the same way that we have here. So that's all really different. And in Australia in particular, they have a very interesting model for repaying. You repay your student loans. You repay your tuition. I don't even know if they call it a student loan, out of your future income, and it's sort of very organized. And here we have programs like that, but they're not that simple. We have a very different set of expectations here for higher ed. I should have known this all along, but it didn't really strike me until I started to work on the book. Basically, in 1980 is when the price. I graduated college in 1979. 1980 or mid 80s, 85, 80, so is when the prices of college started to shoot up and never stopped. It's roughly about the time when U.S. News came along into the picture and kind of changed. U.S. News became the way higher ed. I think U.S. News fueled this consumer notion of higher education. Well, if you're a consumer and you're consuming higher education, you're looking for a pretty campus, you're looking for services, you're looking for a lot of other things. I mean, which is not to say we didn't have all that back the good old days when I was in school, but it can't be an accident that those two things sort of correspond. Colleges started to play a very different competitive game in the mid 80s, and they really haven't stopped. Recently a bunch of really smart scholars, Raj Chetty and others from Harvard, put out this really smart index called the Social Mobility Index. They looked at, they were able to match students with Social Security information and understand how students have fared economically since college. And they've rated colleges based on social mobility in a very carefully constructed way. And that should be that to me would be such a smarter way for us to be measuring our colleges right now. And a lot of these commercial ratings take those measures into account. Money Magazine does to some degree, even U.S. News does. But at the end of the day, a lot of these, they're driven especially U.S. News is driven a lot by spending, not by outcomes. Or they're driven by who gets admitted, not by what the college has been able to accomplish.